Awesome.
Yeah. Missoula hasn't been able to shake me yet. They tried. It's not the easiest place to make it. You got to get creative.
It seems like here to stay. So let's close with a Dram Shop toast over the mic.
Yeah. Cheers.
Thanks a lot, Zach.
Yeah. Cheers.
Hello and welcome to A New Angle. I'm your host, Justin Angle, Associate Professor of Marketing at the University of Montana College of Business. This podcast is my chance to speak with cool people doing awesome things in and around Missoula, Montana. We're interested in creativity and hustle, and the people we'll speak with here exude both of those in spades. Buckle up and let's go. All right, welcome back to A New Angle. Thanks for tuning in today. Today's interview was fun. It was an on-location interview with Zach Millar, the owner and founder of the Dram Shop. And you'd have to be living under a rock if you hadn't heard of the Dram Shop. Those guys have been just killing it here in Missoula. I go in there, and it's a great place to go for meetings, for a place to unwind with friends, to catch up, rendezvous. The only challenge is just finding a place to sit. Anyway, the Dram Shop has its third anniversary coming up on Saturday, April 7th. And it's going to be a fun event going on from noon to midnight, $2 IPAs all day long, music from 9 to midnight, and food from Big Thai Country from 3 to 9. They're also going to be doing giveaways all day long. So check out the anniversary party at the Dram on Saturday, April 7th. All right, and so in the spirit of giveaways, we're going to do our first giveaway here on the podcast. Dram Shop has generously stepped up with the donation of a growler and a gift card to the podcast. And so what we're going to do is for the first 100 of you who rate, review, and share the podcast will be entered into a drawing, and we're going to draw names for these two gifts. And those names will be announced on the podcast April 13th. So, rate, review, share, and put yourself in the hat for a chance to win a cool growler and some free beverage at the Dram. All right, so we'll turn it over to the interview with Zach. Bear with us on the sound quality. As I mentioned, it was a live interview, so there's some challenges there. We get some little, air filtration system noise there. I think at one point the keg delivery guy pops in, and then Elizabeth, the wine expert at the Dram, makes a cameo as well. Not to mention Zach's two pups. So a lot going on in this episode, but I think the content's really fun, and I think you'll enjoy the listen, and I enjoyed the conversation. So without any further ado, I give you Zach Millar. So we're here with Zach Millar, owner and founder of the Dram Shop. Zach, thanks for coming on the podcast.
You bet. Glad to be here.
Yeah, we're also here with Lily and Leroy, the two, I don't know if we call them shop dogs or not, but they're currently here.
We like to call them shop dogs, but they can't hang out as much as they used to.
Yeah, there's probably something about health code or something.
Something like that. Yeah.
But anyway, they're here now. And this is, the pod is on location here. And I can't think of a better location than the Dram Shop, although at 10 o'clock, it's probably too early for a beer. However, Zach has generously poured us a couple of kombuchas, so thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Good way to start the day.
Yeah, so the Dram Shop has kind of become the place in town, at least as far as, my circle of friends go. And it's kind of a neat story. I'd like Zach to tell it more than I would, but maybe start off with how this idea came to be and why Missoula, why now?
Well,
why
sure. Beer? Well, it's kind of a long story, I guess, but I went to the UM for creative writing, and afterwards I began playing a lot of music while I was in college, and then afterwards I ended up playing with a band for several years. We toured nationally, and that was a lot of fun, traveled around a lot, and then...
What was the name of the band?
Cold Mountain Rhythm Band was the name of the band.
Cold Mountain Rhythm Band.
Yeah, back in the day. But, like bands do, the band broke up, and I was like, man, I need a job, hanging out in my girlfriend's apartment all the time. And
right.
So somebody told me, hey, they're hiring at the Big Sky Brewing Tap Room. You should go check it out. And I was like, that sounds great. I like beer. and they hired me for no good reason at all. And I ended up working for them for 11 and a half years.
Okay.
So I was in the beer industry for quite a while before considering opening the shop.
Yeah, what better place to learn about beer industry, but also the microbrewing space than Big Sky?
Yeah, absolutely. They're a great company, and I learned a ton while I was there, obviously. Starting out pouring beers in the tap room, I did numerous different jobs there. So I got to learn a lot about the whole brewing process and the process of running a business like that. And then spent the last probably 6 or 7 years as distribution coordinator.
Okay.
So working with distributors, I think we were in 26 states. So working with distributors all over, taking care of their orders and production forecasting and that kind of stuff.
Now, when you started at Big Sky, were they distributing across state lines at that point already?
Yeah,
Okay.
they were. Although the time I was there, I mean, I would guess when I first started working there, we were probably in like 6 or 8 states.
Right.
And then we would gradually open up new states. We'd try to pick off a couple a year, 2, 3, something like that.
That's and I don't know the legal and regulatory ramifications, but it sounds like there's like a threshold you have to cross producing beer in the state of Montana before you can distribute across state lines. Is that right?
Well, there's no legal threshold, but business-wise there is.
Okay.
Last year they changed some of the rules regarding brewery on-premise sales, which means being able to sell pints in the tap room, which sort of changes the game. But up until that point, there was a production threshold of 10,000 barrels.
Okay.
Barrel is 32 gallons of beer, right? So if you're producing less than that, you're able to operate as a tap room that sells 3 pints per day, 48 ounces. Some places do 4 12-ounce. Some places do 3 16-ounce.
Sure.
So that's a lot of revenue, right? Annually for a small brewery, it's basically it's a lot of cash coming in.
Right.
And so once you get past that 10,000 barrel mark, you couldn't do that business anymore. Then you're moving into wholesale only, right? So there's a growth problem because smaller breweries start out and they operate as a tap room and they sell maybe in the state of Montana, maybe a little bit somewhere else, staying underneath that cap of 10,000 barrels and also continuing to get the revenue from their taproom sales.
Okay.
Right. So for a lot of breweries to make the leap from under 10,000 barrels with the revenue from taproom sales to over 10,000 barrels and give up that revenue just didn't pencil, or people didn't want to take on the investment and make that huge leap to do it. So when I got to Big Sky, they were already over that threshold.
Right.
They're by far and away the biggest brewery in the state. So that wasn't an issue, but for smaller breweries who want to start distributing elsewhere, it's a major issue. Now they just raised that cap, I believe, from 10,000 barrels to 60,000 barrels in the last legislature.
Yeah.
So I forget the name of the number of the bill. So really, the only brewery that affected was Big Sky.
I would assume they're already over that 60 or.
They're still under 6. They're still under 60, and that's kind of why they put it, because those guys have been between 45 and 50,000 per year.
Yeah, got it.
For a few years now. So there's a little headroom for them there, right? But they changed their taproom setup and are able to sell pints now, and which is great because they can realize the same revenue that other breweries can. So there's other breweries in the state that already had workarounds by creating several different businesses, like Kettle House, Red Lodge, I think Lewis and Clark. They split a tap room and a production facility, and then the tap room operates like we do with an on-premise license.
Sure.
And then the brewery operates just like under a brewery license.
Yeah, so let's get to Dram. So you're at Big Sky 11 and a half years, I think you said.
Yeah.
And was Dram next, or what was that?
Yeah, it was for me. I was ready for something new. I was there for quite a while, and I was ready for a new adventure and to take some risks. And was seeing some businesses similar to the shop on the West Coast and Ben and lots of other places they're starting to pop up. And I thought, what a great idea. Here's a place where you can go not only try a bunch of different beers and whatnot, but you can take whatever you want home with you.
Sure.
So, so we decided to give it a shot. And as I got down the road in the planning process, I realized that Montana state laws are different than state laws elsewhere where I'd seen similar businesses.
Okay.
So we had to sort of mold and form our business plan to fit with the Montana state laws.
So you initially modeled this after a couple places you visited, you'd seen some best practices, got the idea, and so then you got to adapt to local law, local conditions. And at some point you engaged with the folks over at the Blackstone Launchpad to maybe help with this idea. So for listeners that don't know, Blackstone Launchpad is basically a team on campus that helps entrepreneurs bring ideas to life, whatever stage of the process they're in.
Yeah.
So what stage did you engage?
I've been working on the business plan for a while. And first I should just say, the Launchpad, I heard about Launchpad through my wife and some other folks in town in the startup community.
Okay.
And it was just recommended, like, hey, you should go talk to these guys.
Yeah.
I'm an alum, so it's free for me to go use their resources.
It's a facility available to alums, faculty, staff, students, etc. So anybody with a UM affiliation, it's totally free. You can visit as often as you want.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I decided to, and for me personally and where I was, I had a pretty good idea of the model and a pretty good idea of the market position, and I had a sense of financially what it was going to take, but I needed help with getting all of that down in a way that would be clear. I didn't understand how the financial process would work.
Okay.
Because I was new to it. I'd never done it before.
Yeah.
So the Launchpad was instrumental in helping me get those numbers down in a way that I could take them to a banker and they would look at them and be like, yep.
That makes sense.
Yep, it'll work, or not.
Right.
But luckily they said it would work. But it was, and so there was a lot of back and forth. I would go and meet with them, and then they say, okay, well, here's what you need to do. And so I'd go back and, stay up late and work, and then I'd go back and be like, okay, they helped sort of coach me through the process.
Sure.
Which was totally priceless.
Yeah.
It's so easy to get turned down by a bank.
Yeah, particularly, even 5-6 years ago when you're probably in this process,
things are still pretty tight.
Yeah, things are still tight,
yeah.
and I'm sure this sort of general category, people are pretty skeptical, or at least lenders are.
Yeah.
I've heard that restaurants and gyms are the hardest thing to get funding for. This is really restaurant.
Right. Well, and I think for us, luckily, we like sort of, straddle the line between the restaurant bar world and the brewery world.
Yeah.
And, luckily people are really bullish on breweries.
Yeah, in this town.
Today. And in a lot of towns.
Yeah.
It's a strong sector. So that was helpful, I think. I should say that, the Launchpad introduced me to a lot of other folks who helped me. It wasn't just going to them for help. They introduced me to accountants and lawyers and several bankers, all of whom were willing to help me for free.
Yeah, so that network is valuable in that sense. So this time when you're laying the groundwork, getting your plans together, etc., penciling it out, are you still at Big Sky? Is this sort of a labor of love after the kids are to bed or whatever stage you're at?
Yeah. Yep. I worked on it for quite a while while I was still at Big Sky.
Yeah.
I had to.
For sure.
I got to pay the bills.
Absolutely.
So, and then whenever we finally had our license ready to go and our finances ready and our lease ready, then I finally was able to quit and focus on this. And I think I had about it was just between 6 and 8 months.
Okay.
Before we opened.
Yeah.
Was where this was all I was doing, was getting going on this.
All day, every day.
And then some.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And so, can you talk a little bit about the process of getting the license here in Montana?
Yeah.
'Cause from what I've heard, it's a little bit of horse trading and everything else.
Yeah, it's a little bit Wild West.
Yeah.
Still, the simplest way to explain it's the simplest way to what we'll call it is on-premise licensing. And so what that means for folks is that's a license where you can come in and I can pour you a beer and you buy it from me and you sit down in the same place where you purchased it and drink it.
Yep.
Okay. There's also off-premise licensing, which is what you need to sell 6-packs to go.
So you're like
right?
a store.
Yep. You're like if you're a Quickie Mart or a grocery store or whatever, you need an off-premise license.
Yep.
Okay, off-premise licenses are a dime a dozen.
Yes.
You just send a little tiny check to the state, and they send you your little thing. They come and check you out, make sure you're good to go. On-premise licensing is a whole nother ball of wax. There are several different kinds. There's an all-beverage license, which means you can sell all kinds of alcohol. There's a beer license, which means you can just sell beer, and then there's beer wine. And then on-premise licenses also can have gambling attached. So for instance, if you want to have a casino, you need to have an on-premise license with gambling attached to it.
Okay.
Right? So, but just because you have gambling attached doesn't mean you have to use it.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So anyway, for the record, we don't have gambling here at the shop. So these on-premise licenses are limited by a quota system. So there are only so many available, and they are quoted out by jurisdiction, right? So by cities and by counties.
Okay.
So, for instance, for the city of Missoula, plus a 7-mile bubble outside of city limits, there are only so many on-premise beer wine licenses available. Okay,
Is that an
That's what we
expanding
have.
number, or is that just fixed?
So
Perpetuity?
it's fixed, except every 4 years when they do the census, they can take licenses that are being unused in communities that are shrinking and move them to communities that are growing. And
Sure.
on occasion, if there's a lot of growth, they'll issue new licenses. Right?
Sounds
But
like gerrymandering of liquor
oh
licenses.
boy. And if they are issuing new licenses, they just changed this like 2 months ago, but if they are issuing new licenses in a jurisdiction, it's a lottery system.
Okay.
So you would put your name in the lottery. If they draw your name, you have to, you get the license for a very small percentage of what it costs on the open market. You have to use it like within a year or something.
Okay.
But it's basically, you're literally winning the lottery because they're expensive. Right? So if you don't win the lottery and you want to open a business like this or like a normal bar or whatever, you need to find a license that is for sale on the open market.
Okay.
You need to go negotiate with the person who's selling it on terms, right? And then you purchase it. It's much like a real estate transaction.
Yeah.
There are not that many available. They're hard to find. In most situations, the person who's selling it has the lion's share of the negotiating power.
It seems like there's probably brokers that.
Yeah, I mean,
people
yes.
in the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, it's a difficult process. There are a lot of people who have ideas about ways to improve the system.
Sure.
There's an issue where there's so much capital and futures tied up in the value of the licenses that changing it will be very difficult.
Yeah.
Because people have,
It's part of the way you value a business, a going concern. Absolutely. And those businesses have transacted and based on that value. So, I guess to get to the point, lottery winner, or did you buy
No. We found one on the open market, and that was actually one of the things that helped us move our process along.
For sure.
Because I was like kind of working on the project, and then I had feelers out for available licenses, and then one came up, and we were like, whoa,
Yeah.
we need to hop on this.
Act now.
So like the wheels were like turning.
And so how did that work with your financing arrangement? I mean, because you can't really predict when that license comes up, but
you have a whole horse cart issue. Right. So, and for us, it was a 3-legged stool. I think, and as it would be for anybody who doesn't have a lot of capital, unrestricted capital available.
Yeah.
Because we had to, you can't purchase a license or present a buy-sell on a license without an associated property. So you need to either have a deed or you need to have a lease signed before you can.
It's not a horse and cart problem. It's like a driver horse and cart problem.
Well, yeah, and then so if you're a person who doesn't have a ton of like free capital, you also have to have your financing lined up.
Okay.
Right? So you have to have like financing lined up at the same time, the lease is lined up at the same time that the deal on the license is lined up.
Sure.
Right? And if you're like us, you get down where there's like a few weeks of squeak time and like you got to put up a bunch of money that you can't afford to lose.
Wow.
You know, and be like,
yeah,
hope this works.
Not without stress.
Yeah.
I imagine. And
it was fun.
A couple little kids at home.
Yeah.
They
were very helpful.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
But it came through.
Yeah. We were able to pull it off.
And then was it like a sprint to open at that point? Or, I mean, because the moment you walk into the Dram Shop, you just can immediately tell this place was put together with great care and thought.
Oh, thank you.
Well, yeah. I mean, obviously, you come from an artistic background, so that's probably a big part of it. But the shop is beautiful. How did the timing work from the point you got the license to? I mean, we got to open soon to get revenue coming in the door. Right. So we had, a timeline. Yeah. One of the many spreadsheets. And I had built into our financing, that I could pay myself during that whole 6 or 8 month period. Yeah. But it was definitely go time. We were lucky enough to work with my brother-in-law, who's an architect on the design for the shop. Yep. Which was, it's as much him as anybody else, and his aesthetic and his ability to sort of parse out what it is you really want to do and what's going to work the best. So I can take very little credit for the way that the shop works, but it was great because we were able to work together in a collaborative way as a team to come out with what we feel like is a nice end. That we wanted a place that would be comfortable, but that would be clean, and we wanted a place where everybody would feel comfortable, not just certain people. Sure. And so it was a really fun process. It was a ton of work, but it's a creation process. That's like fun. Yeah. Yeah. You get to like come up with an idea and then like design it and create it and do it, like bring it to fruition as best you can, with the resources you have. Yeah. So what was the moment where, I'm really interested in the moment at which you sort of realized that this is happening. Like it's not just late at night working on spreadsheets, meetings with Paul Gladen in the Launchpad. It's actually, wow, the doors are open and. Yeah, I mean, it kind of comes in stages, like the first one is like money starts moving around and you start signing documents, right? That's like, then you're like, this is happening whether I like it or not at this point. Or something is going to happen that is going to be big. Hopefully it's like, what we intend. And that was like, okay, time to really work harder than we've been working, and get after it as best we can. And then, everything from that point forward has just been, I don't know, it's been fun. Yeah, execution, yeah. You guys do that well. Yeah. One of the things about that execution piece that I'm interested in is you kind of occupy this unique space as both a collaborator with not only all of the great breweries in and around Missoula, beyond, I guess, but also a competitor in the sense that a lot of these places have their own tasting rooms and such. And so how do you view that relationship role with regard to those other entities?
Yeah, it's on the face of it, you'd think it would be kind of fraught or complicated.
Yeah.
Because, we are in direct competition, so to speak. And, we're also customers of local breweries.
Yeah. Important customer, yes.
Yeah. And we're also, partners.
Mm-hmm.
We're a place for them to showcase their products.
Probably, really important initial touch point for a lot of customers with either a brewery in general or one of their varieties.
Right, absolutely. And actually, so that was one of the things, and I'll get back to that, but
sure.
I'd just like to interject. That was one of the things that I felt really excited about with this business, was just that the model is new and different and didn't exist in the marketplace before. So you kind of have a chance to define it and not make the rules for it, but like kind of navigate what it's going to be. And that's kind of fun because you don't have this same kind of constrictions that, like you said, all right, you're going to open a gym. Like, well, everybody knows, what a gym, and there are some different, now there are some different models for that sort of thing. But this one I felt like was pretty unique. So anyway, to get back to sort of the competition partnership thing, one of the great things about the brewing industry, and I think the cider making industry, and I'm not going to say the wine industry because I don't know it as well. Our awesome manager Elizabeth is our wine person. Is that to date has been a collaborative atmosphere, even among competitors.
Okay.
And that may be changing a little as the growth continues to boom and there's so much money coming into the brewing industry now. But it's a unique industry where you get to compete with friends at the same time that you're collaborating with them. I mean, I don't know how many other industries there are where like you run out of something and you call your competitor a mile and a half away and you're like, hey man, can I borrow a 50-pound bag of grain?
Right.
Okay. And they're like, oh yeah, dude, come on over and grab it. Yeah. We'll order it for you next time if you want. You can just pick it up from us or whatever,
Yeah.
So
do you think that's something about the industry or this Missoula community?
I think it's both.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Missoula in general is a great community that way, but I know that it's not just here. I think overall it's more a tribute to the kind of people who get involved with the industry.
Interesting.
Because most folks who want to get involved in the craft brewing industry are folks that want to do something different.
Yeah.
They're like, I don't want to be a lawyer, man.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to I want to do something cool, something that I'm passionate about, you
Right.
know, and not that there aren't people out there who are passionate about law, but for a lot of folks, I'm laid back, I'm not in this to make $1 million bucks.
Uh-huh.
I'm in it because I want to have a lifestyle that I enjoy. I'm in it because I want to make people happy. I'm in it because I want to do something I'm passionate about. And so I think those types of people being in the industry sort of makes the industry less dog-eat-dog. It makes people want to help each other out. And I think it makes people stoked on each other's products. I mean, one of the latest fads in the craft brew world is collaborations,
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
you industry leaders look at Sierra Nevada. They've been doing the past few years this beer camp across America.
Mm-hmm.
They invite brewers from all over the country to come to their place in Chico. They develop recipes together. They brew the beer. They put it out, and then they select the best ones. They put it out in a 12-pack, and sell it. And these are recipes, developed by there's 25 different breweries involved in that product.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I don't know, as though like Mercedes is calling up Chevy and is like, hey man, like your guys' brake pads are sweet. You know, like maybe we should get together and like talk fuel injectors and like hang out.
We should talk best practices with regard to airbags. You know, yours a little simpler than ours.
Yeah, so it's cool that way, and I worry a little that the competition will just get greater and greater, and it'll be harder to maintain that.
You wonder if there's this inflection point. Like right now, maybe the industry is in this phase of the rising tide lifts all boats.
Yes,
collaborative.
Well, and that's one other thing I was going to say is that right now the industry at large has the benefit of not unbridled growth, but a lot of growth, which, like you said, lifts all boats. It does. It helps, and there's lots of headroom. The craft beer segment is still, I think, under 15% of the total beer market. So there's a lot of beer drinkers out there yet to be converted or whatever. I mean, this is just craft beer industry that I'm talking about, but we'll see how it changes. I think it's a little more dog eat dog on the national level.
Okay.
A lot more breweries are taking money. And with that comes responsibilities that you just lose control. So.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess that speaks to kind of not only the evolution of the industry, but the evolution of this business. So you guys, was it 2014 open doors or early 15?
Well, let's see. So it would have been end of March of 2015 because our 3rd year anniversary is coming up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Advance congrats on that.
Hey, thank you. Appreciate that.
I mean, so it seems like, and I'm not suggesting that operating a small business is without stress. No way. But like, you walk in here on any given night and you think, these guys have arrived.
Right.
That's not to say that it's easy. I'm not trying to paint that picture, but from an outsider's perspective, it seems like you guys have struck a chord in this community, and things are generally going pretty well for the business. Yeah,
they are generally going pretty well, and I feel really lucky for that. I mean, we've worked really hard, and we continue to work really hard. But it's actually one of the reasons why I jumped on this so hard when I felt like there was an opportunity, was because I just sensed that there was an opening for it. I've lived in Missoula. I've lived here. I moved here in '95.
Right.
So I've lived here for a long time. I feel like I know the town really well, and I just had a sense of like this will go.
And so that sense of what's going on in the community, what's ripe, etc. I mean, now that you're a going concern, how do you work on your business in a way that, rather than in, you know what I mean? Like, how do you kind of, you come in here on a given night or watch trends or sort of think, okay, we got to try to emphasize this and de-emphasize that or change this. How do you sort of figure out what's working and what's not and where you want to change or keep things fresh?
There's so much fine-tuning to be done.
Yeah.
I mean, it's surprising to me.
How's it going?
Hi. Oh, good. I didn't know if I should.
You're on tape.
You're on tape. Say hello, Elizabeth.
Hey.
Hi, Elizabeth. Is Elizabeth, you are the wine, do we call you sommelier, or what's its official title?
You could call me the official wine nerd
Wine nerd, that's pretty good.
at the shop. Yeah.
Wine events.
It's
you guys
official.
do these wine tastings. We got to come back to that. But
We're just doing a little podcast interview.
maybe this makes the edits, maybe it doesn't.
Oh, I like it. Okay, cool.
Say something neat, maybe I'll make the cut.
I'm speechless for once in my life.
Probably not what you want to be on a podcast.
This sounds like it.
Speechless. It's the one thing you have to do.
Right. There's not a lot of things.
I'll work on that for my next impromptu.
There you go.
Like,
Thanks.
yeah.
I forget what we were talking about now.
As we're talking about sort of ongoing evolution, you can do what you do better.
Oh,
right? You
sure.
can get better
Yeah.
at doing what you do, but you can also think, okay, what's next? How do we change things? How do we keep it fresh?
Right.
You guys are always doing cool events and
Yeah,
rolling
and
out new ideas.
there's lots of events that were obvious to me from the get-go.
Yeah.
My idea with the business model was that we're a place where there's something for everybody, and we're going to feature all these different styles, and we're going to act as a place for education.
Yep.
We're going to act as a place to expose people to new things they haven't tried before, and to help them learn why why it's cool, what the history is, what the nuances are of production methods and all that kind of stuff, and thereby hopefully inspire people, to be more interested.
Sure.
And
curiosity sort of breeds curiosity.
Right, totally. So style features was an obvious one for me. We do once a month. We take a certain style and feature it for a week.
Style of beer. Beverage.
Yeah, style of beer, yep. And then we started that pretty early.
Yeah.
And took a couple whacks at it. Some things worked better than others. And we just have kind of... We went out a little big, maybe, and then we're like, oh, that's not working so well. So
okay.
Then we kind of scaled it back, just keep it going. I think part of it is just sort of plugging away. And like I was talking about before, we have certain things that we wanted to do, right? We want to create educational opportunities for people. We want to inform. We want to get people excited, right? And so part of that is us deciding, okay, here's what we want to do. And here's why. And then part of that is looking at our numbers.
Yeah.
Looking at what, and basically, when you're looking at numbers in a place like this, we have pretty decent data.
Yeah.
With our POS system. So when you look at numbers, the numbers are basically just a reflection of what your customers want and are into.
Yeah, and you've got this awesome setting for experimentation. How many taps are over there?
Yeah, we've got 41 total.
41 taps. So
yeah.
Think of all the different experiments you can run at the same time. And that kind of leads me into something I'd also like to talk about. So how do you manage that data? And I know you've partnered with some of the programs at the College of Business, particularly the Masters of Science and Business Analytics classes.
Yeah, with
what is that partnership?
John Chandler.
Yeah, John Chandler, probably he's a regular customer here.
We see him every now and again. I won't throw him under the bus completely.
At least half the year when he's in town.
That's right. That's been super cool. He's got his big data class, basically, I think is what we'd call it. And we give him back-end access to all of our sales data, and he separates his class into small teams, and they each will, we'll come up with 2 or 3 sort of big questions, and then he'll allow them to develop their own approach, and he'll kind of guide them. And then, at the end of the semester, they'll do a presentation for us.
Sure.
And it's super, because it's all the stuff that I would do if I had the time to do it.
Right.
And I don't. And I in my mind, I do. But the reality is that when you showed up today, I was fixing a sink,
Exactly.
Instead of nerding out on a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
So, so it's awesome. So we get all this great information, and then we can base our decisions on it. And, honestly, the majority of it, we already sort of know on a gut level, or on just taking a big picture look at the numbers. But then there's lots of surprises.
Yeah, where are the surprises? What have you learned that's changed the way you do things, or that you didn't?
One thing I would say is that events have been productive.
Yeah. Okay.
For us, in ways that maybe from just the outside it doesn't quite. It seems they're fairly successful and people seem to enjoy them. But then when you compile the numbers, you're like, oh yeah, actually they're, worth the work because they're a lot of work to put on. A lot of them are.
And, you do after hours wine tastings or special reserve events or all sorts of things.
Yeah, we do all kinds of events and promotions a few nights a week.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are successful, and they're. Because sometimes in the back of your mind, you're like, oh my God, these events are so much work.
They are.
Are we really getting anything out of it?
Right. Right.
Are we? And, it's easy to feel maybe not. Maybe we're just beating our head against the wall, and people would be just as happy to come in here and relax and have there be no big thing going on. And then, you have be able to partner with awesome people who look at your numbers and they're like, oh man, you're doing it.
And they're probably, the events themselves are successful, but also the spillover effects. It's not just the effect of the event during that time period.
And that's one thing I've always sort of preach that is like, even especially with our tastings and style features and educational stuff, is like, that's okay. We want to make money doing it, right? Obviously, but it's also about positioning.
Right.
It's about defining who we are as a business and how we want to be perceived by people and how we think we can help long term.
Yeah.
You know, like maintain, and that goes back also to what I was saying about our model and about being unique and about how I was inspired to do this because I thought we could be unique. Like all of that stuff, like is the same idea, right? So we're gonna push this stuff even if it doesn't work, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Our first beer week, I think I spent $500 on custom glassware, and I had this whole like idea of like, okay, like it's gonna be the week, so like you come in and you like pay this big amount, and you like get the glass, and then you can like sample all the different examples of the same style with the glass, and the glass, the type of glassware matches the style of beer to enhance the flavors, and like nobody bought a glass, you know. And I was like, oh man, okay, all right, maybe next month we don't do the glassware, but we'll still do the, you know, we'll still do the beers. And so we've tweaked it around the edges, but we do get to occupy that unique space. Like, you know, we get to do collaborations on beers, like with local breweries.
Yeah.
You know, I remember talking to my brother who works at Great Burn, and the first one we did, I think, was either with Big Sky or Draftworks. So we have a cask program, right, where we bring in a cask every week.
Uh-huh.
And we got a hold of him, and I was like, hey, how about we bring the team out there, we'll work on a recipe together, you can bring them into the brewery, show them around. You know, a lot of our employees have not spent time in a brew house or in a brewery cellar situation, so it's really cool for them. And then we collaborate on the beer, the adjuncts we're going to put in there, you know.
Sure.
And then we pour it here. Right. And I was like, yeah, like that's awesome. Why wouldn't we do that?
Yeah, great fit.
And then I remember my brother Colin being like, I think I was telling him about it, and I was like, yeah, it's kind of like a neat thing. He's like, neat. He's like, nobody's doing that. He's like, that's like a thing, man.
Yeah,
like nobody's ever done that before, really. I mean, at least around here, you know, or whatever. Sure. And I was like, oh yeah, you know, you're right. Like that's really cool. So like I was saying before, like we're customers, but we're also partners, but we're also competitors, but we're also, you know.
I mean, you're just, like you said before, it's a project of passion. And I think that is you marry that with a creative spirit.
Right.
And it's a business that's constantly fresh and evolving. It's fun to watch.
Yeah. And, you know, we do get to rotate through so many things. There are so many products available, you know, that it's like always fresh.
Yeah.
You know, and we just put on a shrub from a new business in Missoula.
Right. So
yesterday.
what's a shrub? Tell us about that.
A shrub is I'm kind of new to shrubs myself. They're like an old American vinegar-based fruit drink.
Okay. So someplace related to at least taste-wise, slightly to a kombucha style.
Flavor profile is similar.
Served on ice,
yeah.
Is that right?
Oh, here, I've just been delivered. We'll see how I did. This is the official
Elizabeth,
definition.
the wine nerd, just delivered the official.
Yeah, she's now also the shrub nerd.
Is that sign sit right next to the tap? So
I put it up there so that our employees, who are maybe even as familiar with me, wouldn't know what to say when somebody asks them a tough question. You know,
what is a shrub?
Hard-hitting journalism.
Give me a shrubbery. Sorry.
Shrubs are old-fashioned fruit-based drinking vinegars.
Okay.
All right, so you know these ones are raw fruit, raw honey, apple cider vinegar, and water. Now the company is called Shivlight, and he just started up. He does like bottled concentrates, so you can mix them up at home with sparkling water.
Okay.
A lot of people use them for cocktails.
Yep.
And then he gets us like a pre-mixed.
Sure.
It's non-alcoholic. Right?
Yeah, what a great chance for him to get his brand and product out there. And again, you're like the point of education for many customers.
Totally. Yeah. It's fun, right?
It seems like that rising tide we referenced earlier, either you guys have figured out a way to ride that wave better than others, or it lifts the Dram Shop just so much more.
I don't know. I attribute it to the dogs. They're so sweet.
They're good partners here. I've been Lily, right?
Lily, yeah.
Right on. So, Zach, I mean, we could go on and on. There's so much cool about your business and what you guys do, and I really appreciate the generosity with your time this morning, but also your continued willingness to partner with College of Business and give our students cool opportunities to advance their skill sets and contribute. As we close, there's a question I try to ask folks who come on the podcast, and that is, why Missoula?
Why Missoula?
Yeah.
I love
Been here a long
it.
time.
I love it here, honestly. I've traveled relatively extensively, and there are places that maybe have better amenities in different arenas. You can go to a bigger city and have pro sports teams, or you can go to Jackson and have better access to mountains, but there's no communities like this out there.
Yeah.
And you marry that with the recreational opportunities, and for me, it's the spot, man.
Awesome.
Missoula hasn't been able to shake me yet. They tried. It's not the easiest place to make it. You got to get creative.
It seems like here to stay. So let's close with a Dram Shop toast over the mic.
Yeah. Cheers.
Thanks a lot, Zach.
Yeah.
Cheers.
All right. I hope you enjoyed that interview with Zach as much as I enjoyed talking to him. He's really a really fun guy, and their business is really added a lot to the Missoula community. Coming up next week, we have a group of students who are the founding members of Switchback Records. Switchback Records is a student-run record label here at the University of Montana College of Business. Their faculty advisor, Professor Mike Morelli, is in on the interview as well. It was really cool to get this many students involved in the pod and to talk about some really exciting news they have coming up. They're going to drop their first album on April 13th. And that's a big deal for them to produce an album. It's a bunch of covers of Elvis songs. I don't know how they got access to Elvis's catalog. Actually, that's a cool part of the story we'll be telling next week on the podcast. So hope to see you then. Thanks for listening to A New Angle. We really appreciate it. Remember that A New Angle was brought to you by CED, Consolidated Electrical Distributors. They're our first sponsor, and we can't thank them enough. CED is one of the largest electrical wholesale supply companies in the country with nearly 600 locations nationwide. CED is a privately owned business-to-business company that distributes just about every piece of equipment you need to keep your lights on, your energy flowing, and your lifestyle comfortable. CED is also an important employer in our community, and they have a keen interest in University of Montana graduates. To explore career opportunities, check out www.cedcareers.com. Moving forward, if you have any suggestions for guests, cool people doing awesome things, please let us know. And if you enjoy this podcast, there are several ways you can support it. First, rate us on iTunes. Ratings help others find the show. Second, write a review. The more reviews we get, and hopefully positive ones, the more we can grow. And third, please just tell your friends about it. In addition, you can also support A New Angle financially. For information on sponsorship opportunities, please visit our website, www.business.umt.edu/anewangle. There you will also find a link to support the pod. Before we go, I'd like to thank a few folks for making this project happen. First, my colleagues at the College of Business for supporting this endeavor. In particular, Professor Josh Herbold for writing and recording original music for the show. We also have music provided by Switchback Records, a student-run record label here at the college. I'd also like to thank Elizabeth Willey, recent graduate Michelle DeFluke, and the entire comms team here at the College of Business. And finally, thanks to my producer, Stefan Borsum. As we close, if you have any suggestions, comments, questions, insults, whatever, please email me at anewangle@umontana.edu. Help us spread the word, and be sure to use the hashtag #AnewAngle when you do. Thanks a lot, and see you next time.